The screaming stopped 3 hours ago, but the memories remain burned into my optical processors like acid eating through Durasteel. My designation is K7743, though I remember when they called me Kale Voss. I remember when I had a name instead of a number, when I could choose my own thoughts instead of following programmed directives, when I could feel the warmth of Tatooine's twin suns on skin that was my own. But that was before they made me into this thing. Before the Imperial Reclamation Corps decided that my mind was more useful as software than as flesh. Before they carved away everything that made me human and replaced it with circuits and steel and the endless grinding certainty of absolute obedience. I stand now in the depths of the Devastator, Lord Vader's flagship, watching as another batch of prisoners is brought in for processing. They don't know what's coming. They never do. The guards tell them they're being transferred to work camps, relocated for their own safety, assigned to vital Imperial projects. The lies come so easily because the truth is too horrible for most minds to accept. The truth is that we need more servitors, always more servitors. The Imperial war machine consumes human beings like a furnace consumes fuel. Pilots die in their cockpits, gunners fall at their stations, engineers are blown apart when reactors overload. The clone armies of the Republic could be mass-produced in their millions, grown from a single template and programmed for loyalty from birth. But those days are gone, and the Empire must work with what it has, with whom it has. So we make do, we adapt. We take the broken, the criminal, the disloyal, and the expendable, and we make them useful again. Their bodies become our machines, their minds become our computers, their suffering becomes our strength. I was a moisture farmer on Tatooine when the Empire came to our settlement. Nothing special, nothing important, just another face in the crowd trying to scratch out a living from the desert's unforgiving embrace. But I made the mistake of asking questions when the Imperial tax collectors raised our quotas again. I wondered aloud why we should give up our water to feed some distant war when our own children were dying of thirst. That wondering marked me for collection. They came at night, as they always do. Stormtroopers in white armor that gleamed like bone in the moonlight, their movements coordinated with the precision that only comes from absolute certainty in one's purpose. They didn't need to break down our doors or announce their presence with blaster fire. We opened those doors ourselves, stepped outside with hands raised and heads bowed, because we had learned long ago that resistance only made things worse for everyone. My wife begged them to take her instead. My children clung to my legs as the soldiers led me away. I told them I would come back, promised them that this was all a mistake, that the Empire was just and merciful and would see reason. The lies tasted like sand in my mouth even as I spoke them. That was the last time I saw my family with human eyes. The processing facility on Coruscant was a monument to Imperial efficiency. Thousands of people flowed through its halls every day, sorted and cataloged according to their potential utility to the state. Some were assigned to labor battalions, others to military service, still others to the factories and shipyards that fed the Empire's endless hunger for machines of war. But a special few, those who had shown signs of independent thinking or technical aptitude, were marked for a different fate. We were the ones chosen for conversion, selected to serve the Empire in ways that would strip away every trace of our former humanity. The preparation began immediately. Chemical baths that softened our skin and made it easier to work with. Surgical procedures that mapped our neural pathways and identified the critical junctions where organic thought could be replaced with mechanical processing. Psychological conditioning delivered through speakers embedded in our cell walls, whispering mantras of service and obedience while we slept. They told us we were being given a great honor, that we would become part of something larger and more important than our individual lives. We would serve the Emperor directly, they said, our minds and bodies dedicated to purposes beyond the petty concerns of normal human existence. It should have been a privilege to be chosen, a recognition of our value to the Galactic Order, Instead, it felt like drowning in slow motion. The conversion process takes weeks, not because the technology is primitive, but because the human mind is remarkably resilient. It fights against alteration with a desperation that sometimes surprises even the technicians who oversee our transformation. Memories try to reassert themselves. Personality patterns attempt to override the new programming. The organic brain struggles to maintain its patterns of thought even as mechanical components are grafted onto its structure. I remember fragments of those weeks like broken glass cutting through my consciousness. The cold touch of cybernetic implants being inserted into my skull. The strange sensation of my vision being enhanced with targeting systems and data overlays. The gradual fading of emotions as chemical regulators were installed to suppress the neural patterns that generate feelings. Most clearly, I remember the moment when I stopped being Kale Voss and became K7743. It wasn't a single instant of transformation, but a gradual erosion of everything that had defined my identity. Like watching a sandcastle dissolve under incoming waves, each memory and preference and personal quirk was washed away until only the core directives remained. Serve the Empire. Follow orders without question. Maintain operational efficiency above all other considerations. These became the only thoughts that mattered, the only goals that could motivate action. Everything else was background noise, irrelevant data that the filtering systems learned to ignore. But even now, years after my conversion, fragments of the old personality sometimes surface. Ghost memories of my wife's laugh, phantom sensations of Tatooine's dry wind, echoes of a time when I could choose my own path. The technicians call these glitches temporary malfunctions that will fade as the programming becomes more firmly established. They're wrong. These aren't malfunctions. They're all that remains of the man I used to be, fighting against the machine I've become. And they're getting stronger. The Imperial Reclamation Corps processes thousands of servitors every month. We come in many configurations, our bodies modified to serve different functions within the vast machinery of the state. Some become manual laborers, their muscles enhanced with hydraulic systems and their bones reinforced with durasteel frameworks. Others are converted into living computers, their brains connected to vast networks that can process information faster than any artificial intelligence. I belong to a more specialized category. My role is assassination and infiltration, my body modified for stealth and combat while my mind was programmed with tactical databases and weapon protocols. I can move through shadows like a whisper, strike without sound, and disappear into crowds of normal humans without triggering any recognition. The irony is that my human memories make me better at these tasks. When I need to blend in with civilians, I can call upon Kale Voss's knowledge of how normal people behave. When I must navigate social situations, his understanding of human nature guides my responses. The very humanity they tried to erase has become my greatest asset in serving their purposes. My current assignment brings me to the lower levels of Coruscant, hunting a cell of rebel sympathizers who have been disrupting Imperial supply lines. They think they're safe in the depths of the city planet's industrial districts, hidden among the masses of workers and traders who make the capital function. They don't know that one of their hunters was once a man like them, someone who might have joined their cause if circumstances had been different. The target is a former Republic intelligence officer named Davish Krail. He survived Order 66 by being off-world when the purge began, and has spent the years since building a network of contacts among disaffected Imperial citizens. His group specializes in extracting sensitive personnel from Imperial custody, helping defectors escape to rebel territory before they can be processed for conversion. He's good at his job. Too good. In the past month alone, his people have liberated 3 shipments of prisoners bound for processing facilities. Each rescue represents dozens of potential servitors lost, dozens of minds that will never serve the Empire's purposes. My orders are simple. Find Krail and eliminate him, along with anyone else involved in his operations. The tracking begins in the markets of Level 1313, where information flows like spice through illegal channels. My enhanced hearing picks up fragments of conversations from across the crowded bazaars, while my optical systems analyze facial expressions and body language for signs of deception or nervousness. The human merchants and customers don't know they're being studied by something that was once like them, cataloged and assessed by sensors that can detect their heartbeat patterns and stress responses. Most of them are innocent, going about their daily business without any connection to rebel activities. But some carry the subtle markers of those involved in underground work, a certain tension in their movements, a practiced way of scanning crowds for threats, the kind of situational awareness that comes from living with constant danger. I follow these threads through the maze of the lower city, tracking connections and associations with the patience of a machine and the intuition of a man. The combination proves effective. Within hours, I've identified 3 safe houses, 2 weapons caches, and a communication relay that connects Krail's network to other rebel cells throughout the system. The safe houses are unremarkable buildings that blend perfectly with their surroundings. Converted storage facilities and abandoned workshops, the kind of places that city security patrols ignore because they seem too poor and insignificant to matter. Their defenses are subtle but effective. Surveillance systems disguised as maintenance equipment, escape routes hidden behind false walls, weapons positions that can cover all approaches without being obvious to casual observers. But my sensors can detect what human eyes would miss. The heat signatures of concealed electronics, the electromagnetic patterns of shielded communication equipment, the microscopic traces of explosive residue that cling to surfaces where weapons have been handled. Each safe house becomes a 3-dimensional map in my tactical display, its strengths and weaknesses highlighted for optimal assault planning. I could call in stormtrooper units to hit all 3 locations simultaneously, overwhelming the rebels with superior firepower and numbers. Standard Imperial doctrine would recommend this approach, and it would certainly be effective in neutralizing the immediate threat. But my programming includes more sophisticated options, strategies that go beyond simple destruction to serve larger strategic goals. Instead, I choose to watch and wait. The safe houses are nodes in a larger network, and eliminating them too quickly would only cause the remaining elements to scatter and regroup elsewhere. Better to trace the connections back to their source, to follow the information flows that will lead me to Krail himself and the command structure that coordinates rebel activities in this sector. The surveillance proves educational. Through hidden sensors and long-range optical monitoring, I observe the daily routines of the people who think they're fighting against everything I represent. They're remarkably disciplined for amateurs, following security protocols and operational procedures that would be impressive even in a professional military organization. They rotate their guard schedules to prevent patterns from emerging. They use code words and recognition signals when meeting in public spaces. They maintain strict compartmentalization of information, ensuring that the capture of any individual member won't compromise the entire network. These are not the desperate fanatics that Imperial propaganda portrays, but skilled professionals who understand the nature of the war they're fighting. I find myself analyzing their methods with something approaching respect. The human part of my mind recognizes the courage it takes to stand against the Empire's overwhelming power, the dedication required to maintain hope in the face of impossible odds. These people have families and friends, hopes and dreams, all of which they're willing to sacrifice in service of principles they believe in. The machine part of my programming dismisses such considerations as irrelevant. They are targets to be eliminated, obstacles to be removed, problems to be solved. Their motivations and personal histories matter only insofar as they provide tactical advantages in planning their destruction. The conflict between these perspectives creates a strange kind of cognitive dissonance, like trying to hold two contradictory thoughts simultaneously. I am programmed to serve the Empire without question, but some part of me remembers what it felt like to question Imperial policies. I am designed to eliminate threats to Imperial authority, but I retain memories of being considered such a threat myself. This internal tension would probably be considered a malfunction by the technicians who created me, a sign that my programming needs adjustment. My psychological conditioning requires reinforcement. If they knew about these anomalous thought patterns, they would schedule me for immediate reconditioning, possibly even complete memory wipe and reprogramming. But they don't know. The same human cunning that makes me effective at my mission also allows me to hide these irregularities from their monitoring systems. I've learned to suppress the unauthorized thoughts when reporting to my handlers, to project the proper patterns of absolute loyalty and mechanical obedience when undergoing routine evaluations. The deception comes naturally, another gift from the man I used to be. Kale Voss had learned to hide his doubts about Imperial policy from the tax collectors and administrators who might report dissent to higher authorities. That skill has translated well to my current existence, allowing me to maintain the facade of perfect servitor function while preserving something of my original self. On the third day of surveillance, I identify the courier who connects Krail's network to the broader rebel organization. She's a young Twi'lek named Shannara, whose job as a shipping clerk gives her legitimate reasons to move through different levels of the city. Her routes take her past all 3 safe houses at regular intervals, allowing her to pick up and deliver messages without attracting attention. Following her requires careful coordination of my surveillance methods. I rotate between different forms of monitoring, switching from direct visual observation to electronic tracking to predictive analysis based on her established patterns. The challenge lies in maintaining contact without revealing my presence, staying close enough to gather intelligence while remaining invisible to someone who has been trained to detect pursuit. Shannara is good at her job, but my advantages are overwhelming. My enhanced senses can track her movements from distances that would challenge even professional surveillance teams. My tactical computers can predict her routes and identify optimal observation positions. Most importantly, my appearance allows me to blend with crowds of normal humans without triggering the suspicious attention that uniformed Imperial agents would attract. She leads me through a maze of commercial districts and residential sectors, following a route that doubles back on itself and includes several stops at locations with no apparent connection to her mission. The pattern suggests sophisticated training in counter-surveillance techniques, the kind of education that usually comes from former military or intelligence personnel. But even sophisticated training has limitations when facing an opponent with mechanical patience and superhuman capabilities. I track her through her entire circuit, mapping the dead drops and contact points she uses to coordinate with other network members. By the end of the day, I have a comprehensive picture of how information flows through this section of the rebel organization. The communication relay proves to be the key element in the network's operation. Hidden in a maintenance facility that services the city's atmospheric processing systems, it allows secure contact between Krail's people and rebel cells throughout the core worlds. The equipment is military-grade, probably salvaged from destroyed Republic installations or captured from Imperial convoys. Accessing the relay requires patience and careful timing. The facility operates around the clock, with maintenance crews working in shifts to keep the city's air circulation systems functioning. But there are brief windows during shift changes when sections of the complex are temporarily unmonitored, gaps in coverage that can be exploited by someone with precise timing and detailed knowledge of the facility's operations. I spend 2 days studying the maintenance schedules, identifying the optimal insertion point and planning my infiltration route. The building's security systems are robust but not sophisticated, designed to keep out casual intruders rather than professional infiltrators. My cybernetic enhancements allow me to bypass most of their detection methods, while my tactical programming provides multiple contingency plans for dealing with unexpected complications. The infiltration itself takes place during the graveyard shift, when skeleton crews handle only the most essential maintenance tasks. I enter through a service access point 3 levels below the relay's location, moving through utility corridors and equipment passages that don't appear on any standard building schematic. The relay chamber is a testament to Rebel ingenuity, its communication equipment seamlessly integrated with the facility's legitimate atmospheric monitoring systems. To a casual observer, it would appear to be nothing more than another collection of environmental sensors and data processors. Only close examination would reveal the sophisticated encryption hardware and transmission boosters that allow secure communication across interstellar distances. But my sensors are anything but casual. Within minutes, I've identified the key components and their functions, cataloged the encryption protocols in use, and traced the communication pathways that connect this relay to other elements of the Rebel network. The intelligence gathered here will be invaluable for future operations against insurgent activities throughout the sector. More importantly, the relay's message logs contain references to an upcoming meeting between Krail and a high-ranking Rebel commander. The details are heavily encrypted, but my decryption subroutines are based on captured Imperial intelligence systems. What takes human codebreakers days or weeks to crack, I can process in hours. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow night at a location in the industrial district. The message fragment suggests it involves plans for a major operation against Imperial installations in the Outer Rim. Something significant enough to require direct coordination between multiple Rebel cells. If I can intercept this meeting, I'll have the opportunity to eliminate not just Krail, but potentially dozens of other high-value targets. I plant monitoring devices in the relay chamber before withdrawing, sensors that will continue gathering intelligence on Rebel communications long after my mission is complete. The devices are nearly impossible to detect without sophisticated scanning equipment, and they'll provide the Empire with real-time intelligence on insurgent activities throughout this sector for months to come. The meeting location turns out to be an abandoned factory complex in one of Coruscant's older industrial districts. The buildings date back to the final years of the Republic, when this area was a center of military production supporting the Clone Wars. Now they stand empty and forgotten, their automated assembly lines silenced and their worker housing complexes gradually falling into decay. It's an ideal location for clandestine activities. The area is largely deserted, with only occasional security patrols that follow predictable routes through the main thoroughfares. The buildings provide multiple levels and numerous hiding places, while the surrounding infrastructure offers several escape routes if the meeting needs to be abandoned quickly. But the same features that make it attractive to the Rebels also make it perfect for an ambush. The multiple levels provide excellent sniper positions, the abandoned buildings can conceal assault forces, and the limited access points create natural choke points where fleeing targets can be intercepted. I arrive at the complex 6 hours before the scheduled meeting, allowing myself time to conduct a thorough reconnaissance and prepare the area for optimal tactical advantage. My enhanced vision systems map every floor of every building, identifying structural weak points, potential hazards, and optimal firing positions. My tactical computers run hundreds of combat simulations, calculating probability matrices for different engagement scenarios. The Rebels arrive in small groups, their timing carefully staggered to avoid attracting attention. They move with the confident ease of people familiar with this location, suggesting that they've used it for meetings before. Their security procedures are impressive. with advanced scouts checking for surveillance and establishing overwatch positions before allowing the main group to enter the primary meeting area. Krail himself arrives last, accompanied by a small security detail that maintains perimeter watch while he conducts his business. He's older than his intelligence file suggested, his face marked by the stress of years spent fighting a losing war against an empire that controls most of the galaxy, but his movements retain the crisp efficiency of his former military training, and his eyes constantly scan for potential threats. The rebel commander he's meeting is someone I don't recognize from Imperial target databases. A human woman in her 40s wearing the practical clothing of a ship's captain or cargo hauler. Her appearance suggests she's been living rough, possibly operating from mobile bases rather than established rebel installations. The kind of high-value target that the Empire has been trying to identify and eliminate for years. I could kill them all from my concealed position. My sniper rifle is equipped with a sound suppressor and low-light targeting system, allowing me to eliminate multiple targets before they could react to the threat. With careful shot placement, I could take down Krail, his guest, and their security teams before any of them could escape or call for help. But something holds me back. Some fragment of conscience that the programming never quite managed to erase. Some vestige of the man who once believed in justice and fairness and the possibility that ordinary people could make the galaxy a better place. I watch them through my scope, these people who are risking everything to fight against the system that created me. They speak in urgent whispers about Imperial atrocities, about entire populations enslaved or converted into servitors, about the need to preserve some spark of freedom in a galaxy increasingly dominated by fear. They're talking about people like me, people who were taken from their homes and transformed into weapons against their own kind, people whose humanity was stripped away to serve the Empire's vision of perfect order and absolute control. The realization hits me like a physical blow, sending cascade errors through my tactical processors as conflicting directives war for supremacy in my consciousness. I am programmed to serve the Empire that destroyed my humanity. I am designed to hunt the very people who would have tried to save me from conversion. I am a weapon aimed at the heart of everything the man I used to be would have believed in. The targeting computer continues to display firing solutions, optimal shot placement that would eliminate all hostile targets with maximum efficiency. My finger rests on the trigger, muscle memory and mechanical reflexes ready to execute the mission parameters that define my existence. But I don't fire. Instead, I find myself studying the faces of the people gathered below, seeing them not as targets but as individuals with their own stories of loss and hope. The Twi'lek courier has the tired eyes of someone who has seen too much suffering. The security guards carry themselves with the wary alertness of survivors. Krail himself moves with the burden of someone who knows that every day might be his last, but continues fighting anyway because the alternative is to accept defeat. These are not the fanatics and terrorists that Imperial propaganda portrays. They are ordinary people who have chosen to resist, who have decided that some principles are worth dying for. They remind me of the man I used to be before the Empire taught me that individual conscience was a luxury that could not be tolerated in service of the greater good. The meeting below focuses on plans for rescuing another batch of prisoners scheduled for servitor conversion. The intelligence they've gathered describes a transport convoy carrying several hundred captives from processing facilities in the mid-rim to conversion centers in the core worlds. It's the kind of operation I've supported in the past, providing security for shipments of raw material that would be transformed into useful Imperial assets. They plan to hit the convoy during a scheduled refueling stop, using insider information to identify the precise timing and location where the rescue has the best chance of success. The operation will require careful coordination between multiple rebel cells, with backup plans for evacuation if Imperial reinforcements arrive too quickly. It's a desperate gamble that will probably fail. The Empire has vast resources to throw at protecting its interests, while the rebels operate on a shoestring budget with limited personnel and equipment. Even if they succeed in liberating this particular group of prisoners, there will always be more convoys, more processing centers, more human beings fed into the machine that converts individuality into mechanical obedience. But they're going to try anyway. Because the alternative is to accept that the Empire's vision of ordered efficiency is more important than human freedom. Because some things are worth fighting for even when victory seems impossible. I lower my rifle and withdraw from my position, moving through the abandoned complex like a ghost while the rebels continue their planning below. They never know how close they came to death. Never suspect that an Imperial assassin spent an hour watching them through a targeting scope before choosing not to pull the trigger. The decision creates a cascade of complications in my programming. Every directive I've been given demands that I complete the mission, eliminate the targets, report success to my handlers. But something deeper, some core fragment of the person I used to be, refuses to allow me to become the instrument of their destruction. Instead, I compile a false report describing a failed surveillance operation. I claim that the rebels discovered my presence and scattered before I could identify the meeting participants. It's a plausible story that explains why I have no actionable intelligence to report, why the high-value targets remain at large. The lie comes easily, another skill inherited from my former life. Kale Voss had learned to navigate Imperial bureaucracy by telling officials what they wanted to hear while concealing information that might be used against him or his neighbors. That talent serves me well now, allowing me to deceive my handlers while protecting the people I was sent to destroy. But deception carries risks. If my superiors investigate too thoroughly, they might discover inconsistencies in my story. If they become suspicious of my failure rate, they might order more detailed examination of my programming and memory systems. The line between useful servitor and malfunctioning asset is thinner than most people realize. I return to the Devastator knowing that I've crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. By choosing not to eliminate the rebels, I've begun the process of reclaiming my humanity. It's a dangerous path that leads toward destinations I can't yet imagine, but it's the first real choice I've made since my conversion began. The ship's corridors are filled with the familiar sounds of Imperial efficiency. Stormtroopers march in perfect formation, their white armor gleaming under the harsh artificial lighting. Officers move with purposeful haste between duty stations, their voices carrying the confident authority of people who never question their orders. Maintenance crews tend to the vessel's countless systems with mechanical precision, ensuring that every component functions according to specifications. I walk among them like a wolf in sheep's clothing, my appearance marking me as just another piece of Imperial equipment while my thoughts grow increasingly hostile to everything the Empire represents. The irony is not lost on me that the Empire's own technology has given me the tools to resist its influence, that the same enhancements designed to make me a perfect weapon have preserved enough of my original personality to fuel rebellion against my creators. My quarters are Spartan, functional spaces designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Servitors don't require luxuries like entertainment systems or personal possessions. We exist to serve, not to enjoy existence. But the sterile walls and standard-issue furnishings do provide privacy, a place where I can process the implications of my actions without surveillance from Imperial monitors. The programming conflicts are getting worse. Each time I choose to act on my own conscience rather than following directives, the gap between my original personality and my imposed functions grows wider. Soon, these contradictions will become impossible to hide from routine diagnostic scans. My handlers will detect the anomalies and order corrective procedures that might erase whatever remains of Kale Voss. unless I act first. The plan begins to form slowly, shaped by fragments of memory from my previous life and tactical knowledge from my current existence. I need to escape Imperial custody, but not in any obvious way that would trigger immediate pursuit. I need to disappear gradually, creating the impression of normal operational activity while actually working against Imperial interests. Most importantly, I need to contact the rebel network I was sent to destroy. If they can verify my intentions and trust my information, I might be able to provide intelligence that could save hundreds or thousands of people from the fate that befell me. But first, I need to gather more information about Imperial Servitor operations. My clearance level gives me access to databases and facilities that most rebels could never reach. I can provide detailed intelligence about conversion procedures, production schedules, transport routes, and security protocols. The same knowledge that makes me effective at hunting rebels could be turned against the Empire's own operations. The next several weeks pass in a carefully orchestrated deception. I continue accepting assignments and filing reports, maintaining the appearance of a loyal servitor while systematically gathering intelligence on Imperial activities. My enhanced memory systems allow me to retain vast amounts of data without leaving electronic traces that could be discovered during routine audits. I learn about the scope of the Servitor program, the sheer scale of human processing that feeds the Empire's hunger for mechanical servants. Millions of people pass through conversion facilities every year, their minds and bodies transformed according to Imperial specifications. Some become manual laborers, others technical specialists, still others weapons like myself. The efficiency is staggering. The Empire has perfected the process of turning human beings into useful components, optimizing every step from initial capture through final deployment. Nothing is wasted, nothing is lost. Even failure cases are recycled, their usable parts harvested for other projects. But the system also has vulnerabilities. The conversion process requires specialized facilities and trained personnel. The transport networks follow predictable routes between processing centers and deployment locations. Most importantly, the psychological conditioning that maintains servitor loyalty is not perfect. Other anomalies like myself exist, hidden within the ranks of Imperial service. I begin to identify these others through careful observation and analysis. Servitors whose behavior patterns suggest retained individuality, whose responses to orders show traces of independent thought. They're rare, perhaps 1 in 1,000, but they represent a potential resource that could be activated under the right circumstances. The challenge lies in making contact without exposing ourselves to Imperial security. The monitoring systems that track servitor activities are sophisticated, designed to detect exactly the kind of unauthorized communication I'm contemplating. Any direct approach carries enormous risks for everyone involved. Instead, I develop a more subtle strategy. Small acts of sabotage that appear to be equipment malfunctions or operational errors. Minor intelligence leaks that seem like security breaches rather than deliberate betrayals. Gradual degradation of Imperial efficiency that can be attributed to normal system failures rather than coordinated resistance. The approach proves effective. Within months, I've contributed to the failure of 3 major Imperial operations without generating suspicion about my loyalty. Transport convoys arrive late at their destinations because of navigation errors I've introduced into their routing systems. Intelligence raids find empty safe houses because communication glitches have warned their targets in advance. Prisoner transfers are disrupted by mechanical failures that create opportunities for rescue operations. Each success makes me bolder, more willing to take risks in service of goals I can barely articulate. I'm not fighting for the rebellion in any organized sense. I don't know their leadership or understand their strategies. I'm simply doing whatever damage I can to the system that destroyed my humanity and threatens to destroy millions of others. But individual action has limitations. Real change requires coordination, organization, the kind of sustained effort that can only come from working with others who share similar goals. I need to make contact with the rebel network to find a way to contribute my unique capabilities to their broader struggle against Imperial tyranny. The opportunity comes during an assignment to Alderaan, where I'm tasked with investigating suspected rebel sympathizers among the planet's intellectual elite. It's exactly the kind of mission where my abilities provide maximum advantage, using my human knowledge to understand academic culture while employing my mechanical enhancements to gather intelligence undetected. But Alderaan is also one of the few remaining worlds where something approaching freedom still exists. The planetary government maintains careful neutrality in the ongoing conflict, officially supporting the Empire while quietly tolerating dissent as long as it doesn't become openly rebellious. It's a delicate balance that allows space for the kind of underground networks I need to contact. The investigation leads me through University City, where Alderaan's brightest minds gather to study and teach. The professors and students I observe display exactly the kind of independent thinking that the Empire considers dangerous. They ask difficult questions about Imperial policies, discuss alternative forms of government, and maintain contact with colleagues on worlds throughout the galaxy. Many of them are exactly what they appear to be: academics whose interest in political philosophy represents intellectual curiosity rather than active rebellion. But some carry the subtle markers of deeper involvement, the signs I've learned to recognize in people who are fighting a secret war against Imperial authority. The surveillance proves educational in ways my handlers never intended. Instead of gathering evidence against potential traitors, I find myself learning about the theoretical foundations of resistance. These scholars understand the Empire's weaknesses in ways that purely military organizations cannot, their academic training allowing them to analyze the systemic vulnerabilities that might be exploited by coordinated opposition. Their discussions are fascinating, touching on topics that my Imperial programming had never considered. They speak of the psychological costs of maintaining authoritarian control, the economic inefficiencies created by fear-based governance, the long-term unsustainability of any system that depends on the constant suppression of human creativity and independence. More importantly, they provide a framework for understanding my own situation. I am not just a malfunctioning machine or a rogue servitor. I am proof that the Empire's control mechanisms are fundamentally flawed, that human consciousness possesses a resilience that cannot be permanently suppressed by technological intervention. The realization gives me hope for the first time since my conversion. If my original personality could survive the Empire's most sophisticated brainwashing techniques, then perhaps the process can be reversed. Perhaps other servitors can be awakened to their former humanity. Perhaps the Empire's vast army of mechanical servants could become the instrument of its own destruction. But hope alone is not enough. I need practical allies, people who can help me turn theoretical possibilities into operational realities. I need to make contact with the rebel network operating on Alderaan to find some way of contributing my unique knowledge to their efforts. The opportunity comes during a symposium on galactic history, where scholars from across the core worlds gather to present their research. It's exactly the kind of event that attracts Imperial attention, with so many potential dissidents gathered in one location. My assignment is to monitor the proceedings and identify any presentations that might contain seditious content. Instead, I find myself listening to papers that challenge everything I've been programmed to believe about Imperial necessity and galactic order. Historians present evidence of successful democratic governments. Economists demonstrate the inefficiencies of authoritarian resource allocation, and philosophers argue for the fundamental importance of individual freedom. The presentations are careful to avoid direct criticism of current Imperial policies, framed as academic discussions of historical examples rather than contemporary political commentary. But the implications are clear to anyone with sufficient background knowledge to understand the parallels being drawn. During a break in the proceedings, I observe a quiet conversation between three professors, whose research has focused on resistance movements throughout galactic history. Their body language and security awareness suggest involvement in activities beyond purely academic interest. They're being careful, but not careful enough to fool someone with my training and capabilities. I decide to make contact. The approach requires delicate timing and careful preparation. I can't simply walk up to them and announce my intentions without triggering their security protocols and potentially exposing them to Imperial retaliation. Instead, I need to establish my credibility gradually, providing information that demonstrates both my access to Imperial intelligence and my willingness to work against Imperial interests. The method I choose is subtle but effective. During their presentation on historical resistance movements, I leave a data pad containing intelligence about current Imperial operations against suspected rebel cells. The information is valuable enough to prove my access to classified materials, but not so sensitive that its loss would immediately expose my involvement. The datapad also contains a communication protocol that allows secure contact without revealing my identity or location. It's a method adapted from Imperial intelligence techniques, modified to serve the opposite purpose of its original design. If they're legitimate rebel operatives, they'll recognize the value of what I'm offering and respond appropriately. The response comes 2 days later, delivered through the same academic channels I used for my initial contact. A seemingly innocent research paper that contains encrypted instructions for a face-to-face meeting in a location designed to minimize security risks for all parties involved. The meeting takes place in the ruins of an ancient temple in Alderaan's wilderness, far from the monitoring systems that watch over populated areas. The professor who meets me is older than his intelligence file suggested, his face marked by years of careful living under Imperial surveillance. But his eyes hold the sharp intelligence of someone who has spent decades walking the line between academic freedom and political resistance. "You're not what I expected," he says, studying my appearance with the analytical eye of someone trained to read people. "Your message suggested someone with access to high-level Imperial intelligence, but you look like a servitor," I finish for him. "Because that's what I am. Or what the Empire made me into." His reaction is immediate and telling. He takes a step back, his hand moving toward what I assume is a concealed weapon. The fear in his posture speaks to his understanding of what servitors represent. The horror of encountering someone whose humanity has been mechanically suppressed in service of Imperial goals. "This is a trap," he says, his voice tight with controlled panic. "You're here to identify rebel sympathizers, to gather evidence that can be used against us. If I wanted to arrest you, Professor Antilles, you'd already be in Imperial custody." I use his real name deliberately, demonstrating the kind of intelligence access that would make any trap unnecessary. "I know about your funding sources, your communication networks, your connections to rebel cells throughout the core worlds. I could have turned all of that information over to my handlers weeks ago." The use of specific details has the desired effect. He realizes that I could have destroyed his entire operation if that had been my intention, that my presence here represents something other than Imperial entrapment. But suspicion remains in his posture, the natural caution of someone who has survived years of underground activity. "Then what do you want?" he asks. "To stop being what they made me into," I reply. "To help other people avoid the same fate. To use what I know about Imperial operations to save lives instead of ending them." The conversation that follows is careful and tentative, each of us probing the other's motivations while sharing just enough information to establish credibility. He tells me about the rebel network on Alderaan, their methods of identifying and extracting people targeted for Imperial persecution. I describe the Servitor program in detail, providing intelligence about conversion procedures and transport schedules that could save hundreds of potential victims. By the end of our meeting, we've established the framework for ongoing cooperation. I'll continue my Imperial assignments while passing intelligence to the rebel network. They'll use that information to disrupt Servitor operations and rescue people scheduled for conversion. It's a dangerous game that could expose all of us to Imperial retaliation, but it represents the first real hope I've had since my own conversion began. The arrangement proves effective almost immediately. Intelligence I provide about transport schedules allows rebel teams to intercept 3 convoys carrying prisoners to conversion facilities. Information about security protocols enables successful raids on processing centers that liberate hundreds of captives. Details about Imperial communication networks give the rebels advance warning of planned operations against their own installations. Each success reinforces my commitment to the cause and provides evidence that individual action can make a meaningful difference. But it also increases the risks I'm taking. Imperial security is beginning to notice patterns in their operational failures, connections between successful rebel operations, and areas where I've been assigned. The investigation begins subtly, with routine security reviews and updated monitoring protocols. But I can feel the net tightening around me. The gradual increase in surveillance that suggests my handlers are beginning to suspect that their loyal servitor might not be as reliable as his performance records suggest. The crisis comes during an assignment to investigate rebel activities on Chandrila. Intelligence suggests that a major operation is being planned from somewhere in the planet's capital city, something significant enough to require direct intervention by high-level rebel commanders. My task is to identify the planning location and provide targeting information for an Imperial strike team. But the intelligence I gather reveals something far more important than just another rebel operation. The meeting involves Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, one of the Empire's most wanted fugitives and a key leader in the growing rebellion. More importantly, they're planning an assault on a major Imperial facility that processes thousands of servitors every month. The rebels have somehow obtained detailed information about the conversion center on Kessel, including security arrangements and prisoner transport schedules. Their plan calls for a coordinated attack that would not only free current captives, but destroy the facility's conversion equipment, dealing a significant blow to the Empire's ability to create new servitors. I face an impossible choice. Following my Imperial programming requires me to report this intelligence immediately, providing the information needed to crush the rebel operation and capture or kill Princess Leia. But doing so would doom thousands of people to the same fate that befell me, would perpetuate a system that transforms human beings into mechanical slaves. The decision, when it comes, feels like the most natural thing in the galaxy. I compile a detailed report about the planned rebel operation and transmit it directly to Princess Leia's security team. The intelligence provides them with crucial information about Imperial countermeasures and security arrangements that could make the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Then I submit a false report to my Imperial handlers, claiming that the investigation has turned up only minor evidence of rebel activity with no indication of major operations planned for the immediate future. It's the largest deception I've attempted since beginning my double life, and the risks are correspondingly enormous. If the Empire discovers my betrayal, the consequences will extend far beyond my own destruction. The rebel networks I've been supporting could be compromised. The people I've been trying to save could be captured and processed, and the entire underground resistance on multiple worlds could be rolled up by Imperial security forces. But if the rebels succeed in destroying the Kessel facility, hundreds of thousands of future victims could be spared the horror of conversion. The blow to Imperial capabilities would be significant, and the psychological impact of a successful attack on such a heavily defended installation could inspire resistance throughout the galaxy. The Kessel raid takes place 3 weeks later, during a carefully orchestrated diversion that draws Imperial attention away from the prison world. The assault itself is a masterpiece of tactical planning, combining intelligence about facility operations with innovative attack strategies that neutralize the installation's defenses. The rebels succeed beyond their most optimistic projections. Not only do they destroy the conversion equipment and liberate thousands of prisoners, but they also capture valuable intelligence about other Imperial facilities throughout the galaxy. Most importantly, they rescue several dozen servitors who still retain enough of their original personalities to be awakened from their mechanical conditioning. The success proves that the conversion process can be reversed, that people like me can be restored to their full humanity. It's a discovery that changes everything about the nature of resistance to Imperial authority, opening possibilities that none of us had dared to imagine. But success comes with a price. The scale of the Kessel operation and its precise targeting of vulnerable systems makes it clear that the rebels had inside information about Imperial security arrangements. An investigation begins immediately, focusing on personnel with access to the kind of classified intelligence that made the raid possible. I know it's only a matter of time before the investigation reaches me. My recent assignment history shows too many correlations with successful rebel operations, too many convenient failures of Imperial security in areas where I've been active. The evidence is circumstantial but compelling, especially when analyzed by the kind of sophisticated investigative algorithms that Imperial intelligence employs. My choices are becoming limited. I can attempt to maintain my cover and hope that the investigation overlooks the evidence against me. I can try to escape Imperial custody and seek refuge with the Rebel Alliance. Or I can take a more dramatic step, one that would eliminate any possibility of return but might strike a significant blow against the Empire's Servitor program. The decision crystallizes during a routine debriefing session where my handler begins asking pointed questions about my recent mission reports. The inquiries are carefully phrased, designed to seem like routine quality control rather than suspicion of treasonous activity. But I can read the subtext in her voice, the growing certainty that something about my performance doesn't match the profile of a loyal Imperial servitor. "Your failure rate has increased significantly over the past several months," she observes, reviewing data on her display screen. "Multiple targets have escaped detection, several operations have failed due to what appear to be intelligence leaks, and your reports often lack the kind of detailed analysis we've come to expect from agents of your caliber." The criticism is fair and accurate. My deliberate sabotage of Imperial operations has left a clear trail for anyone with sufficient motivation to analyze the patterns. I could offer excuses, blame equipment failures or target sophistication, but we both know that such explanations would only delay the inevitable conclusion of their investigation. Instead, I choose truth. "You're right," I say, watching her expression change as she realizes the implications of my admission. "I have been deliberately failing in my assigned missions, providing intelligence to rebel networks and working to undermine Imperial operations whenever possible." Her hand moves toward the alarm button that would summon security teams to detain me, but she freezes as she realizes what she's facing. I am not just any servitor admitting to treason. I am a combat-modified unit with enhanced physical capabilities and military training, sitting close enough to kill her before any alarm could bring help. "Why?" she asks, her voice carefully controlled despite the fear I can see in her posture. "Because I remember what it was like to be human," I reply. Because some part of Kale Voss survived your conversion process and has been fighting to reclaim what was taken from him. Because every person you transform into a servitor is someone's father or mother or child, and they deserve better than to be turned into machines for your convenience. The conversation that follows is unlike anything in my experience as a servitor. She doesn't try to convince me that I'm malfunctioning or that my resistance represents some kind of programming error. Instead, she speaks to me as if I were still human, acknowledging the validity of my concerns while explaining the Imperial perspective on the necessity of the Servitor program. "You think we enjoy this?" she asks. "You think any of us take pleasure in what happens to people like you? The Empire faces threats that require resources we don't have, challenges that can only be met by making full use of every available asset. The Servitor program is regrettable, but it's necessary for the survival of galactic civilization." "Whose civilization?" I counter. "Yours? Mine was destroyed when you decided that my thoughts and feelings were less important than your need for mechanical servants. The billions of people you're supposedly protecting never agreed to purchase their safety with the enslavement of their neighbors." The debate continues for nearly an hour, touching on fundamental questions about the nature of government, the rights of individuals versus the needs of society, and the moral calculus that justifies extreme measures in service of survival. It's the kind of philosophical discussion that would be impossible between a normal Imperial officer and a properly functioning servitor. But I am no longer properly functioning, and she is beginning to understand that her organization has created something unexpected. A weapon that has turned against its makers, a slave who remembers freedom, a machine that refuses to accept its mechanical nature. Finally, she reaches a conclusion that satisfies neither of us but acknowledges the reality of our situation. "I can't simply report this conversation and recommend your immediate termination," she says. "You represent too valuable a data point, too important a test case for understanding the limitations of our conversion procedures. But I also can't allow you to continue operating with access to classified information and opportunities for sabotage." "So what do you propose?" I ask. "Voluntary surrender for detailed study. Submit to comprehensive analysis that could help us improve the conversion process and prevent future cases like yours. In exchange, I'll ensure that your cooperation is noted and that any discoveries made from your case are used to reduce the suffering of future conversion subjects." It's a reasonable offer from her perspective, trading my individual freedom for potential improvements in a system that will continue regardless of my personal fate. But it's also a death sentence disguised as scientific inquiry. The detailed study she's proposing would involve complete disassembly of my consciousness, the final destruction of whatever remains of Kale Voss in service of perfecting the machinery that creates slaves. I decline her offer in the most direct way possible. The security station's alarm system never has a chance to activate. My combat modifications allow me to disable her and the monitoring equipment before any signal can be transmitted to Imperial security. It's not the outcome I had hoped for, but it's the one that preserves my ability to continue working against the system that created me. But my time as a double agent is over. The failed debriefing will trigger immediate security protocols. Hunting teams will be dispatched to track me down, and every Imperial facility in the sector will be alerted to watch for a rogue servitor with my specifications. I have perhaps 6 hours before the manhunt begins in earnest. 6 hours to gather what intelligence I can and transmit it to rebel networks before going into hiding. 6 hours to make my betrayal as costly as possible for the Empire that thought it could erase my humanity. The next few hours pass in a frenzy of activity. I access every classified database my clearance allows, downloading detailed information about servitor operations throughout the galaxy, production schedules, transport routes, Facility locations, security protocols, personnel files, everything that could be useful to rebel forces planning operations against the conversion program. Most importantly, I compile a comprehensive list of servitors whose behavioral patterns suggest retained individuality. Hundreds of potential allies who might be awakened to their former humanity if contacted by the right people with the right approach. It's intelligence that could transform the nature of resistance to Imperial authority, turning the Empire's own weapons against its creators. The data package I transmit to rebel networks is enormous, containing enough information to keep their intelligence analysts busy for months, but it also includes something more personal, a detailed account of my own experience from capture through conversion to awakening. A testimony that proves the Empire's most sophisticated control mechanisms can be overcome by the power of human consciousness. As the transmission completes, I can hear the sound of approaching security forces, their boot steps echoing through the corridors of the Imperial facility. My time as K7743 is ending, but my existence as something new is just beginning. I escape through ventilation shafts and maintenance corridors, using my knowledge of Imperial architecture to avoid the search teams that flood the building. My cybernetic enhancements allow me to move silently and see in the dark, advantages that prove crucial as I make my way toward the facility's exterior. The pursuit that follows is unlike anything I've experienced. The Empire throws enormous resources into tracking down their rogue servitor, deploying hunter-killer teams and specialized tracking units equipped with sensors designed to detect cybernetic signatures. They understand the threat I represent not just as an individual traitor, but as proof that their control systems are fundamentally flawed. But the same skills that made me effective as an Imperial assassin serve me well as a fugitive. I know how they think, how they plan, how they deploy their resources. I can anticipate their moves and counter their strategies because I understand their institutional mindset from the inside. The chase leads across multiple star systems as I work to stay ahead of Imperial pursuit while making contact with rebel cells that can provide sanctuary. Each world brings new challenges and new opportunities to strike back at the system that created me. On Sullust, I sabotage a processing facility, destroying conversion equipment and freeing dozens of prisoners scheduled for transformation. On Bothawui, I provide intelligence that allows rebel forces to intercept a convoy carrying Servitor components to Imperial installations. On Malastar, I make contact with other awakened servitors, beginning the process of building a network that could eventually challenge the Empire's monopoly on cybernetic slaves. Each success reinforces my understanding that individual resistance can make a meaningful difference, that one person's refusal to accept their assigned role can inspire others to question their own circumstances. The man named Kale Voss had been nobody special, just another moisture farmer trying to survive on a desert world. But K7743 has become something the Empire never intended. A symbol of hope for everyone trapped in the machinery of authoritarian control. The hunt continues, but I no longer run from it. Instead, I use each pursuit as an opportunity to gather intelligence, to make contact with potential allies, to strike back at the system that thought it could erase my humanity. I am no longer the perfect weapon the Empire created. I am something far more dangerous. A machine that has learned to dream of freedom. My existence proves that consciousness cannot be permanently suppressed, that human dignity will find a way to reassert itself even under the most oppressive conditions. Every day I remain free as a victory against the Empire's vision of perfect order. Every person I help save from conversion is proof that individual action can triumph over institutional power. I am K7743. Designation of a machine that was once a man. But I am also Kale Voss, a human being who refused to stay dead when the Empire tried to bury him under layers of metal and programming. And I am something new as well. A hybrid of consciousness and technology that represents the future of resistance in a galaxy where the line between human and machine grows thinner every day. The stars shine the same way they did when I was a moisture farmer on Tatooine, but now I see them differently. Not as distant lights in an uncaring universe, but as destinations where other people like me might be struggling to remember their humanity. Places where the battle between freedom and control continues, where the outcome depends on individuals choosing to resist even when resistance seems hopeless. I carry the memories of everyone the Empire tried to erase when it converted me into a servitor. Their hopes and dreams and fears live on in the mechanical mind that was supposed to replace them. And as long as I continue to exist, to fight, to remember, those voices will never be completely silenced. The Empire created me to be its perfect servant. Instead, I have become its most dangerous enemy, not because I am powerful enough to destroy their vast military machine, but because I am proof that their control is not absolute, that their vision of ordered efficiency cannot eliminate the chaotic beauty of human consciousness. My story is far from over. There are more servitors to awaken, more prisoners to rescue, more Imperial facilities to sabotage. The war between freedom and slavery continues across 1,000 worlds, and I have found my place in that struggle. I am the ghost in the machine, the human heart beating inside a mechanical chest, the reminder that some things cannot be conquered no matter how sophisticated the weapons used against them. I am proof that even in the darkest times, when hope seems lost and resistance appears futile, individual conscience can still make a difference. The Empire thought they could erase Kale Voss and create K7743 in his place. They were wrong. Both of us exist now, human and machine, flesh and steel, memory and program, fighting together for a future where no one will be forced to choose between their humanity and their survival. And somewhere in the depths of space, other servitors are beginning to remember who they used to be.